Chapter 3, April 25th, 1941 to October 5th, 1942. Kopaliny Farm, Poland. I didn't make it as far as my grandmother's. For the first 3 days after leaving Krakow, I wondered if I'd make it anywhere at all. Papa had warned me to be careful about who I trusted, so I trusted no one. I stole eggs from unattended chicken coops, hid whenever a car or wagon passed by, and slept in cold ditches at night, covered with reeds or grasses, wondering how long I could last this way. Not long. I'd known that since the moment I left Krakow. Then on the third day, I wandered past the sign for the village of Kopaliny, and memory sparked within me. A farm there was run by a couple named Shimshon and Gustav Dringer, both in their early 20s. Before the war, they had been the leaders of my Jewish scout group, Akiva, which taught us about our culture and history and who we might become one day. I'd lost track of them after the invasion, but I'd heard Shimshon was arrested for a while for some of his anti-Nazi writings. Late that night, I showed up on the Dranger's doorstep, tears rolling down my cheeks. I hadn't seen them for 2 years. What if they didn't remember me? What if they did and couldn't take me? By the time Gusta opened the door, I was almost shaking with worry. She was a pretty woman with a serious nature and a warmth that immediately began to calm me. "Chaya Linder?" she said, clearly surprised. I took a deep breath, hoping that what I had to ask wasn't too much. I knew it was. The last thing anyone needed these days was another mouth to feed. "Will you let me stay the night? I can leave my morning if—" "Nonsense!" Gusta wrapped an arm around my shoulder and led me inside. "Of course you can stay here, for as long as you want." If there was a way to love her more in that moment, I didn't know it. I did stay, and it wasn't only me. One by one, the first summer, other Akiva scouts came to the farm, all of us suddenly on our own, but slowly becoming family. We worked on the farm during the day and gathered each evening to socialize and study. It was a good life, until we thought of those who had left behind. All of our true families, most of whom were now trapped inside the ghettos during what turned out to be a very cold winter, locked behind walls with little food and too much disease. The problems worsened with every new wave of Jews brought in from other areas of Poland. Then sections were made and hundreds disappeared by train or were simply shot in the streets. So far, my family was not among them, but I saw other Akiva members crying and prayed that I would never have to fully understand how they felt. Most of the news about the ghettos came to us from other Akiva leaders. A man a little older than the Dringers, whom everyone called Dulek. I'd heard it was a fake name, but I never asked him about it. If he was hiding his true identity, there had to be a reason. Where both the Dringers looked distinctly Jewish, Dulek had more Polish features. Thanks to Shimshon's forgeries, he was able to travel nearly anywhere in the country and return as often as possible, telling us of a war that seemed to be spreading all over the world, of Jewish resistance groups forming up in Warsaw, or worst of all, what happened to those who were taken away by train. Which meant I was already anxious on the day he arrived from Krakow and motioned me over beside him on a bench at the back of the house. It was early in the summer of 1942, and I'd hoped the warmer weather would bring better days ahead. How wrong I was. Dulek had just come from the Podgorsk ghetto where my family lived. No, it couldn't be that. Surely there was another reason why his mouth looked grim, his eyes so heavy, and why the tone of his voice was flat when he said, "I have some terrible news for you." My heart constricted, enough that I could barely mumble, "Please don't say it." He paused. Too long. It was as if he was struggling to force the words out. Then it was even harder to make myself sit there when what I really wanted was to run somewhere, anywhere, and to keep running until the war couldn't touch me anymore, where it couldn't hurt me or those I loved. but that was impossible. Finally, he said, "It's about your brother and sister. I'm terribly sorry." I stopped breathing, and the corners of my vision blurred. This wasn't happening. Not this. He continued. Sarah was taken away on train to Balzac. Dollock's tone was gentle, but his words struck me like a blow to the chest. "I thought you should know." "What is Balzac? A labor camp?" At first he didn't answer. He only furrowed his brow, his somber expression full of compassion. "I've told you what I've seen there, Chaya. You already know what it is. A death camp." Sarah was barely 8 years old. She knew nothing of war or violence. She'd fallen victim to a level of hatred she couldn't begin to comprehend. Enormous tears spilled down on my cheeks, which I was certain would never dry. But he wasn't finished. I squeaked out, "My brother?" "The same night as your sister was taken, your brother failed to return home. Yitzhak was 12 at the time. He loved to build things with his hands, but my father had hoped Yitz would join him in his shoe repair business instead. Like my mother, he used to sing. Used to. Maybe he was still alive. Maybe not. We might never know for sure. On the day my little sister was sent to her death, I'd been planting seeds in the ground, congratulating myself on having escaped the worst effects of the war. That evening, when Yitz disappeared, I'd been laughing with my friends here, planning the feast we might have when the harvest came in. I was utterly ashamed of myself and vowed in that very moment to find a way to remember them, to honor them, a way to bring some meaning to their loss, if I could. I just didn't know how to do it. My answer came later that night as we gathered around the supper table. Dalek reported on what he'd seen and heard around Poland, about the mass graves of Jews shot dead in the forests. Our people packed so tightly onto trains that many never survived the trip to the so-called labor camps, and if they did survive, they were likely killed upon arrival anyways. "We know the truth," he said. "Most of the Jews do not. They refuse to believe it or can't comprehend such horrors." His eyes flickered to me, "Even when it touches their own lives." Then Dolok told the others about my family. There were tears and expressions of sympathy, but I was hardly the first to receive such news. Only the latest in a long line of Kiva members who were mourning friends and family still trapped in ghettos. Or not in ghettos, not any longer. Shimshon stood. "Our situation is becoming clear. It is time for Akiva to make a choice. Do we remain a scout group pretending the war isn't happening to us and never will, or do we become something more? Let us decide our fate before it's decided for us." Standing beside him, Gusta said, "Let's be clear. Any decision we make will end with our death. If we do nothing, if we wait here, it's only a matter of time before the Germans come for us and put us on the same trains." Dolok leaned forward to add, "Or there is a second option. What if we die on our feet, fighting back?" He grinned. "What if we prove to the Nazis, prove to the world, that not all Jews will go like lambs to the slaughter?" Shimshon clapped the hand on his friend's shoulder. "We will join the resistance groups. We will disrupt the Germans when we can. Above all, every way possible, we will try to save the lives of our people, if you all agree." As I lifted my eyes to him, I was flooded with competing emotions. Fear and doubt swirling with sadness and guilt, blending strangely into something I could only describe as excitement. I didn't understand why I should feel such eager anticipation. None of us had military experience or, for that matter, life experience. We had no money, no connections, and no training. Our Akiva leaders weren't pretending we had any chance to succeed. But if we did nothing, if we continued living behind this sheer veil of safety, then we would certainly fail. More important, I owed something to Yitzhak, and Sarah, and to my parents, who might eventually be forced into the death camps too. I wanted revenge for every single Jew who had fallen, and a chance to save the life of every Jew still standing. I was one of the first to raise my hand and say, "I'm in." Other hands followed, both boys and girls, the youngest of us teens and our leaders not much older. I didn't know how someone like me could possibly make a difference, but if this was my way to honor Yitzhak and Sarah, then I would do whatever my leaders asked of me. Their request came that same night. After everyone else had left for bed, Gusta pulled me aside. "Have you heard of couriers, Chaya?" When I shrugged, she added, "The courier's primary job is to get in and out of ghettos. To get in, you'll have to forget everything that makes you Jewish." She pursed her lips. "I've noticed your accent is less Jewish than the rest of ours." "We lived in a Polish district before," I said. "My parents sent me to the public schools with Poles." She smiled, obviously pleased. "Were you often mistaken for being Polish?" "More than I was thought to be Jewish. In contrast to many Jews, my hair was blonde, my complexion a little lighter. I spoke Polish fluently, as I did Yiddish, the language of most Jews in Poland, and I even spoke a little German." Gusta's face became very grim when she said, "I won't lie to you, Chaya. This is a very dangerous job. As a courier, you will smuggle in food or money, maybe forged identification papers or items of greater risk. At all times, you will have information about the resistance. If you are caught, you might be shot. More likely, you will be tortured first." My eyes widened. "Tortured?" She didn't hesitate. "The invaders will do whatever they can to extract the information they want. If you don't succeed with you, they will threaten your loved ones or fellow prisoners. They might kill them right in front of you, but under no circumstances can you ever tell them what you know. Not one word, Chaya, or everything we are doing here is lost." I couldn't pretend that her words didn't frighten me, and she saw my hesitation, quickly adding, "Focus on the goals of the resistance. Remember why we are doing this. If you can focus, you will lose the fear. Lose the fear and you will save lives." "What about my friends?" I asked. "Jacob, Reuben, boys cannot be couriers. With circumcision, it's too easy to identify them as Jewish, and only a few specific girls can do the job. Girls with your look, girls with your courage. Girls like me with little to lose," which meant my decision was made. "I'll do it." My training began immediately. Within a month, I had completed my first successful mission inside the Lubin ghetto. The second month, I smuggled in my first weapon. By the third month, I was arranging safe houses for Jews in hiding, and now it was October 1942, a month after my 16th birthday, and I had just made it inside the Tarnow ghetto to undertake my most dangerous smuggling operation yet.